We will now welcome our next group of panelists to share their insights on the strategic levers shaping a company's direction. On the panel are CLI's Group Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Lee Chi-kun, and joining Chi-kun is Mr. Suchad Chiara-Nusati, Chairman and Founder of SC Capital Partners Group. 2 days ago, CLI announced a strategic investment of a 40% stake in SC Capital Partners Group. Mr. Suchad has guided the firm's growth into a prominent real estate investment company with $7.6 billion in assets under management across private funds and REITs. His visionary approach has also driven the establishment of strategic ownerships and partnerships across 7 operating platforms. Moderating this panel is Ms. Janine Gui, CLI's Chief M&A Officer and Deputy CEO, CLI International. Janine leads the identification and executions of mergers and acquisitions opportunities globally to accelerate and scale CLI's business growth. She led CapitaLand in its milestone merger with Ascendus Singbridge in 2019, as well as the restructuring of CapitaLand in 2021, and the listing of CLI in 2021 as well. Let's welcome the speakers onto the stage. I will hand the time over to you, Janine. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Very delighted to have both Suchad and Chi-kun with us this morning to share more about the strategic transaction that was announced 2 days ago. And thanks, Julie, for giving the quick introduction. I think one of the things that I would like to emphasize arising from this transaction is the fact that we have acquired 8 billion or 11 billion of FUM, strengthening our foothold in Asia Pac. That is an important milestone for CapitaLand investment. And more importantly, 3/4 of the FUM that is acquired comes from Japan. And that has elevated Japan to be our 3rd largest FUM country after China and Singapore. And we are also very pleased to be a part of extending our fund management franchise expertise, as well as acquiring track record in Japan, and of course the maiden entry of our J-REIT manager in Japan itself. So now let's get into the panel discussion. I'm sure the floor is very excited. This morning during my breakfast, I was bombarded with a lot of questions. So I told them that it's best to leave to the 2 men of the moment this morning to take some of these questions. But before that, this transaction opens up a new chapter for both SC Capital as well as CapitaLand investment in Japan. And I'm sure the floor will really love to hear from the 2 of you. When the both of you first met, what were the initial thoughts that were running across your mind about that this could be a very interesting, very meaningful collaboration and partnership for the 2 firms? Maybe I can get Suchad to share first, and then Chi-kun can share his thoughts as well.
Thank you for the opportunity to come up here, and also for the chance to be able to share our story. I think the first meeting that I had with Chi-kun was introduced by Miguel Ko. I think the first thing that I have is in the next 3 minutes, it will be a major decision whether I want to be folded my interest into CLI or not. And it really depends on the people and the chemistry that I strike up in that few minutes with actually Chi-kun. He probably don't know about it, but a very, very important factor for me to bring back to my partner, and told my partner we have found something that I could stand behind it, and to say that this is something that we can work with and to grow together, and then 1 + 1 = 3. I have finally found something like this. I think many of you may have known we have been talking to about probably 12 people that have been approached at that, and we have been telling them it doesn't work for us, and I become a broken record of saying no. And it actually, with Miguel, I'm very comfortable with Miguel. I'm very comfortable with Chikun. And Chikun will lay down in that 3 minutes what he wants to achieve for CapitaLand. And I just say, that exactly, I think, is the way it should be going. So I want to say, I think you were the determination factor, and that actually your character and what you said in that meeting would actually resonate very well with me. So again, it comes back to people.
Thank you, Suchat. I mean, to be fair, actually, Janine and I, we looked at many deals. Some really big ticket items that, if you ask me, that could totally transform the scale immediately. But you know, when you look at platforms, you look at some of these investments, it's not just about doing transformational deal just to grab the headlines. It's about looking for platforms, looking for teams that you feel that you can invest not just in the platform, but can really work together to accelerate the growth. You know, we looked at platforms, you know, in the size of 50, 60 billion funds under management, which Miguel alluded to earlier. We decided not to do, not because we couldn't afford it. We decided not to do because there were issues about culture that we are not so comfortable with. And there's no point in, you know, trying to invest in a platform from 60 billion, then it doesn't grow, or worse, you know, it declines. It just defeats the purpose. But, you know, talking to Suchat, I mean, it's not just about, you know, the initial chemistry. Along the way, we talk about deals, we brainstorm about possibilities, and, you know, we generally open to talk about strategies, and I think even talking about new investment ideas, sharing capital partners. I personally think that it will really help to drive the growth, not just for SC Capital, but also will help CLI to learn more about the private fund space, which Suchat and his team has started out from day one, building a private funds business. Whereas from CapitaLand, we started as a developer that built an asset management business along the way. So I think there are many things that we can learn from Suchat and his team.
Yeah, and Suchat, on that note, perhaps it's also useful to share with us how you have built the legacy of SC Capital in the last 20 years. I know you shared with me and told me that you started out with, was it 2 or 4 person in your office, and now today you have 100 over people within the team. Maybe share a little bit about that.
I think some of you may not aware of this, that 20 years ago, I made a decision to creating a private equity real estate pan-Asian platform. From day one, it was very clear that I am determined to do everything I could with my partner to create a platform for institutional capital. So when you decided from day one you want to create a platform institutional rather than for your own investment, you set up the company differently, you set up a platform very differently. So the fiduciary standard, the fiduciary responsibility, the setup that we have over the year have withstand many due diligence by the largest institutional investor in the world, in our process, in our whole everything we do. So I think I'm very proud and that would have been set up. I think in our business, it's a very difficult, but yet it's a very simple success factor that you need to have. Over the 20 years we've done, we have to be a good investor. You can do as much as you like the process, as much as you like, but if you cannot be a good investor, investors look around and they have many choices. So if you cannot be an investor that can create an outside return consistently, there are many other choices out there. Investor doesn't need to keep you capital. So for us to be doing well, to be expanding, to be growing, the most fundamental thing is we must be able to identify, locate good deal and able to close that good deals with whatever capital we have and whatever to entry and exit to show investor that you know how to exit. Entering into investment is just the beginning of the process. Raising money is also just beginning the process. The real process is when you can really exit, show the rate of return, and investors say, yes, you have done a great job. You didn't hold your asset too long. So there are a few fundamental things that you must do it right. The other thing that I coming back to just now, the board had mentioned some of the things really resonated with me. It's the capital allocation decision that we as a company must be able to make. We had a discretionary fund with a full discretion to deploy our capital across Asia Pacific. So that's about 12 different countries we could deploy to, and how we end up with 80% in Japan, and then nothing in Myanmar, for example, or something like that. It is a capital allocation decision that we consciously make every day based upon our opportunity right in front of us, and based upon the deal that we have seen, based upon what we know our capital is looking for us to do. So sometimes, capital expect you to do ABC, and then you happily do something else. And if you get 30% return, people may forgive you. But if you don't do well, people hate you for it. So I think it is important, capital allocation, discipline on what to do, what not to do. Not every deal should be investable. And I think from our perspective, we must be able to have an extremely high discipline to be able to survive in the game that we are doing right now at the moment. And at the time going on, there are more larger players coming to the region. 20 years ago when I starting off, there were few managers, many of which no longer around. That time we don't have a major group coming in. Today you have Blackstone, KKR, Apollo, you have people from Hill House from China, Fosun, very big player came into the region. It is not for us to be complacent and said we should be able to hit them head on. And it is for this reason that I make a very responsible decision. Responsible decision here to find a good partner that can work with in order for my platform that I created to become a sustainable platform that can service 65 institutional investors that have come alongside us over the last 20 years. It's a decision that I make. It's a very hard decision, I must say, Chikun. When you build up something for 20 years, it's a very hard decision, I can assure you that. It's not an easy decision, but the right time, you have to make that. And I think the deal with Chikun and CLI, for many of you know, it is a 5-year transformation. So what I have promised the board, what I have promised Chikun, and what I promised my own staff, essentially in the next 5 years, we will lean on CLI, use additional capital the CLI can give it to us. At an independent company, we may not have that resources, but in order to use that resource well, to scale up and to build our platform to be a sustainable, great platform over the next 5 years. And then over the next 5 years, we have time to integrate that into the CLI world. And I am very committed to make sure that integration go well. I told Chikun and the board, I am not talking about 40, 50 people in SC Capital Partner today. We had 4 operating partners below it that had 200 over people. So when we talk about a transaction 2 days ago, it is 250 people transaction. And therefore, it had to be extremely responsible. 200 people plus average family size of 5. This is 1,000 people that I am basically surrendering or really go into a strategic partnership with somebody like CLI, that had an impact on 1,000 over people that we're putting in. So I don't take this responsibility very lightly. So rest assured, we have gone through a lot of talking to what our business is going to be. Just as we speak, we're already talking about a very large data center platform that we are working with together. And with all this, it's actually 250 people that I like to bring toward the CLI, work closely with CLI, and to make it a much bigger platform that we have. That is something that, sorry, I've taken a little bit longer, maybe a bit more mumbling, but it is an emotional speech. You are asking someone that just got married 2 days ago to come and talk about it. It is a little bit ago. So our job, when I look at CLI, I say CLI like the funnel behind me, the vortex. There's a lot of water going down, water get recycled. It is recycling of capital. CLI role is really just to recycle capital well. My role in a very small way is to take part of that capital to recycle it well and then make my platform, make our footprint and CLI footprint be complementarily and grow together. That's exactly what I'm very committed to do. And I'm also hear the same thing from Chee Koon as well. So I'll stop here because I can go on forever, but we need to do. But
Thank you, Suchard. I think that was indeed a somewhat emotional speech from you, but thank you and appreciate you taking this very responsibly as well. But it's a good segue. You make an interesting point about some of the global competitors coming to Asia Pac and doing it in a big way to raise new strategies, to raise new capital. So perhaps talking about our combined forces as a partnership, how do you see us combining ourselves together and perhaps looking at how do we differentiate ourselves to Judy's point? Where do you see the synergies are, the opportunities for us to grow together in? Chee Koon and Suchard, we really love to hear that from both of you.
Thank you, Janine. I alluded to some of those points earlier about curating deals, investment strategies, and whether we can also bring our capital partners to look at some of those interesting things that Suchard and the team are developing. But at the end of the day, the business itself is really about the people. I was also talking to Suchard about CLI seconding people to SC Capital, people who understands our ecosystem, so that we can help whatever that it's possible, whether it's fundraising or accessing to resources that CLI has, because his team wouldn't know the CLI system so well, who to call, what kind of resources to pull. And what we want to do is to give Suchard and his team that autonomy to run the business, but where we can, in terms of the resources that we have as a group, to help them to be successful from HR, from other resources. I mean, that's the idea of working out a successful partnership.
I totally agree with that. I think the commonality between us is we serve institutional capital. We serve our LP. So whatever that we have to combine, working together in terms of adjustment, so that both of us can serve our LP, combine larger group of LP better. That's something that we're much committed to do. I think that's something I'm much willing to combine the whole, committed the whole entire organization to make that happening. The integration, smooth integration, all that, it's very important. And there shouldn't be any differences, really. People said entrepreneurial businesses and large organizations, they cannot be together. I don't agree with that, because I do think that the common objective is that you just have to be doing good at what you're doing, and just very common idea that whatever good for our limited partnership, it ultimately will good for us. Okay, what is not good for our limited partnership, over long term, we won't get the support from limited partnership. As a result of that, we wouldn't be a large fund management, asset management platform if we don't get support from our limited partnership. So That is very fundamental to me. And I think the other thing that is very fundamental is the nimbleness and the ability to make a decision, to go after deal, to be able to really put forward without allowing something to constrain you too much, but yet you must have a very disciplined. You must do proper due diligence, you must have internal process and all that, but as much as possible, anything that can create the inefficiency for you to make a good decision, we should sit down together and see what we can restructure that. Whatever that will cause inefficiency, so that we end up making suboptimal decision, either investment, going after a deal, capital allocation, we must try to do less of it. And that is something that is very, very clear, come out in our discussion all the time.
Jenny, just let me add on. I mean, I just can't help but go back to Suchart's original point about dating. I actually didn't know the first 3 minutes of my meeting with Suchart was so important that determined, the fate of the marriage between the two entities. But just reflecting, actually a lot of the number of deals that I used to do at the platform level, a lot of time is got to do with that chemistry and that trust. And the first few minutes actually determine whether things can work or cannot work. But this is only the first part, the dating, the getting married. And along the way, I must tell you, Suchart's ability to look at big deals, to hunt for things that are difficult to hunt, getting himself into very interesting positions where he can look for deals and marry capital together. And that's, to me, I actually opens up my minds to possibilities about gearing up in terms of growth for the private funds business. So I'm actually very excited about the partnership with Suchart. He opens up my mind so much more than what I imagined that the world of the private equity business could be. Thank you, Suchart.
Thank you. When I look at CLI, initially people had kind of like let me know the CLI, a different sort of organization from us. But after I looked through CLI and analyzing very closely, the lodging and our lodging is almost identical in the sector that we play in. CLI had a fantastic lodging platform. We in Japan, hospitality platform, in the 10 years that we had invested in Japan, it's in 2010, we have done 96 hotel transactions. We sold 14, so add together we did 100, almost 110 hospitality transactions in Japan. We also have non-Japan asset. We had about 55 other investments we make outside. So in Japan, we had a very large operational platform in that sense. And the hospitality side of art and hospitality side, there's a lot of synergy there that's incredible. I mean, every day I'm talking to my colleague right now and saying, okay, we're going to do service department in Japan. We're already calling Ji-kun. I'm taking Ji-kun and say, look, we're going to talk to your colleague. And so there's a lot of things that's happening. We're talking to our LP. I'm talking to my LP together. And we already kind of like had them meeting up. Our Abu Dhabi LP base and already meeting up with TS in Hong Kong. And we had a lot of very good meetings that's happening. So there's a lot of synergetic value, actually much more than people from outside really do it. And then on the private fund business, it's slightly different, but we know that CLI is moving the model, going more asset light, and I absolutely respect the decision that you could make. It's not decision transformation. We're starting off from day one. It's an asset light model, very asset light. Matter of fact, actually it's so light that we actually use very, very little asset to grow the business of 7.6 million. Our core investment, GP core investment, typically 1%, right? So I think for us, that's how little capital we use to grow our business. CLI will be like to move that asset to our model. We will be here working with CLI hand to hand in order to make the transformation. CLI agreed to support us with strategic capital. It allows us to scale up. Today in our business, it is about scaling up. But when you scale up in the old model of absolutely opportunistic, so in other words, one day you can buy a sector, the next day you can do that, and then the following you can do something else. Those days are pretty much have gone. Today in our business, it's all about having a thematic discipline. So the data center digitalization, lodging that Andrew was alerting to, we talk about logistic platform, retirement home, having millions of people retiring, having 60 million, 170 million people traveling, therefore hospitality, lodging, all that kind of big macro movement is something that we must set up the platform to capture them. And if you have a discipline to capturing all that, I mean, if you, let's say, for example, in the next 20 years, there will be 100 to 200 million people traveling in Asia Pacific, internal. And if you multiply that by the 5-year, 10-year next forward, it's billions of people traveling. I mean, if you are here in the middle of it, you can create a platform working with an operational platform, married with the discipline of the investment, married with the capital accessibility. You put these three together, I can tell you it's very difficult to fail. But if you have none, one of that, the other, no capital, you will fail. You have no operational expertise to allow you to make a better decision, chances you might fail. You don't have an investment acumen, chances you might fail. But if you have all three in this room here, for example, I can assure you that the success rate is much higher. And that is my personal opinion, and this is why we believe that this is a great combination. And losing control over it in order to create such a great platform, it's something I'm happy to do it, to be part of it. I think the calling for us over the next few years, 10 years, I mean, I actually looking at your 200 million by 2028, I think the dollar sign you should change from Sing dollar to US dollars. I think that's something that you should be really thinking about. It within reach of us, just on the data center alone, I would not be surprised that we are talking about 50, 60 billion dollar asset that accessible to the group here. On the credit side, I mean, there could be so many opportunities. So I do get very excited, and sometimes I don't get sleep well at night because I get so excited about the opportunity right in front of us in the next 5 to 10 years.
I see a lot of excitement and ideas brewing, and I see a lot of questions from the floor as well. So now maybe we turn over to the floor, and you can raise your hand and we can have the roving mic move over. I think we have one question from at the back of the hall. Please state your name and the firm that you belong to before you raise your question.
Yeah, hi, morning. Brandon from Citi. I have just two questions from Suchard. The first one is, are you able to share some of your historical track record in terms of returns for the 7 private funds that you have seeded? I think mainly the recap fund series. That's my first question. And the second question would be, I think you've been in Japan for a very long time, like I said, 20 years. But I think Japan itself now, it's in a very different environment, obviously, with the potential hike in interest rates and currency weakness as well. So how do you see Japan going forward from here? Yeah, thanks.
In terms of the track record, it might not be the venue to share that with you, but I'm very pleased to let you know that we had done 7 or 8 funds over the last 20 years, and my track record is actually 5 years before that with Westbrook Partner. We haven't had a single fund on an aggregate basis lost money on. So we had a 25-year track record that haven't lost money from investor. We like to extend that for another 20 years. This is something that is quite unusual. achievement. We have targeting return on our fund of about 20% return. That's an opportunistic. On our core fund, we look at about 11 to 12% return. We so far have met a lot of, many funds have met that, but obviously there were different cycle of timing. For example, if you had some hospitality and you enter into the COVID, I mean, you're going to underperform your 20% definitely. So we do have some of that, but as I reported to you, overall 2025 year, we have not lost money from investor in any of the fund that we have. And we not intend to lose any money from an investor. Going back to your Japan question, I have traded JGB in my previous slide. Actually, I started my career in 1987. Japanese yen, trading JGB, trading treasury and all that. So I've seen that interest rate in Japan have moved. Japan have moved from 75 all the way to almost close to 200 during that period. So what you're seeing today, Japan is just right in the middle of it. Please do not panic. Between 110 to 150, Japan is in the middle of the range of the 30-year cycle. And Japan will continue to done well. The only thing I want to share with you that if you do have a particular fear for Japanese currency, please do not stop you from investing in Japan. You can use the currency to hedge. Japan is the only market you can hedge 10, 15 years forward. So your currency view and if your sectorial investment opportunity view could be segregated. It doesn't have to be lumped together. So I would have just appealed to you that if let's say hospitality is showing you a growth rate of 10, 15%, and you say, wow, the yen just jumped from 130 to 150, so I don't want to go into Japan. You will miss the 20% growth rate on that business for the next 10 years. So I think it's important managing your risk is another issue. But actually making an investment, you should look at underlying the business. And today, what I'm seeing in Japan, underlying it, it's fundamentally very, very good. I mean, you always had positive yield curve for the last 20 years. Your financing cost is relatively low. I mean, we have done 10 years ago when we bought our first hotel, it was 9% unlevered with people guarantee. Our financing cost at that time was 3%. So if I said yen is going to weaken, so I step out of Japanese market, I would have lost that 10 years, 20 to 12 years of return. So it's important to don't let something to scare you. It's fundamental return is very, very important. So I hope I answered your question.
Chikun, would you like to comment on the Japan market? We've been seeing quite a fair bit of a flow of inbound and outbound investments as well for Japan for ourselves.
The big picture, I mean, Japan was, I mean, there was no inflation in Japan for many years. I think we started to see real inflation, increases in prices. I visit Japan very regularly. You go to the family mart, you buy a bottle of a drink. It's always been 100 yen for many years, for many, many years. Until recently, now you see 130 yen, 150 yen. So there's real inflation. That's point number one. Point number two, I think the Japanese government has made it quite clear they want the Japanese companies to be very, especially the listed companies, to drive ROE, to make sure that they can trade above NAV. So there are many restructuring possibilities that are happening in amongst the Japanese listco. Some of them have to shed their non-core real estate assets, and to me that creates opportunity. And there's another angle, is the push by the Japanese government or the encouragement by the Japanese government to convince the Japanese savers to move their money from the savings account into the investment account. And to me, this actually creates a very right environment for us to do a lot more in Japan. Of course, we can't be strong in every single sector. Lodging, hospitality is one that we believe in. Logistics, it's heavy competition, but we have to maybe consider the modern logistics area, which is what we are studying and talking to some Japanese partners how we can scale, and of course data centers. I especially like the lodging and the hospitality team in Japan. If you look at Paris itself, just the city of Paris, it attracts maybe 50 million tourists on a yearly basis, roughly. Japan as a whole, I don't have the latest numbers, but maybe about 30 million or so. Yeah, countrywide. And that's not even accounting for the fact that the Chinese travelers going to Japan, if you compare what they have today and before COVID, it is 30% below COVID. So my view is that there's going to continue to be a lot more demand for hospitality products. And some of us may not know, the inflationary pressure in Japan is real. There are fewer people working in the construction sector. A lot of the construction resources have been put in to build semi-con facilities in Kyushu and in Hokkaido. Ballpark, the construction of new hospitality assets on a per key basis is roughly 2x compared to the existing stock of hospitality assets. So having the ability to gain access on assets, being able to renovate it, drive the growth, actually creates tremendous upside. That's based on, macro, based on our teams on the ground. And if you talk to Kevin's team, our Japan service apartments, before COVID, we were selling maybe the best that Kevin has is maybe 300 Sing dollars. Today, is selling at $900. Singaporeans will complain it's expensive, but he tells me that the Chinese people who go there to stay in his escort say that it's cheap. And it's full, it's running 90%. So that's our belief in terms of what we see the promise of the Japan market.
I'd like to add that today, there's no secret that many of the activist investors are housing themselves in Japan, trying to looking for hidden value in a lot of listed company here. So the choice for us is you want to wait until they went through it, and therefore they clean up and creating something nice for you to buy, or you want to join in early on with them and create a value for our investor. And I think the choice was very obvious. We would like to be there earlier. We would like to be there alongside with them. Sometimes we may be competing with them, but not on the hostile manner, in order to create a value for our investor and for our platform. This is something that we see as a big opportunity.
Japan is so fascinating. I spend so much time in the market. The other side of the Japan market is the collaboration with many of the Japanese corporates and companies. Because of the investment in terms of our investments in Japan and our collaboration from Japanese banks, the construction companies, the corporates, and we are bringing them in terms of investments in Southeast Asia, into India, into Australia. And why? Because actually, you look at Singapore companies in terms of philosophy, in terms of value system, very, very similar, very close to the Japanese companies. And there's comfort because we are very long-term strategic. So not just only for looking for investments in Japan, but also to work with them for outbound opportunities.
Thank you for the very comprehensive responses from both Chee-Koon and Suchard. I think we have time left just for a couple more questions. Derek, can we have the roving mic over there?
Hi, good morning. I'm Derek from DBS. Suchard and Chee-Koon, I'm very excited about the marriage. I'm sure sparks will fly in the next few years. Just maybe one simple question. I think while we just announced the combination just a couple of days ago, I'm sure in your minds you will think about the next 3, 5 year or even a 10-year plan. We do not have much at this point in time, but could you let us know, what's our plan in the medium term about the Japan strategy? Yeah, thank you.
Japan strategy today, we had about 82 hotels in Japan that SC Capital Partner side. I think we would like to continue to expand it. On average, every year we acquired about 8 to 10 hotels. That's what we've been doing very successfully in Japan. I don't think so that anyone that would trade in Japan and would not show the deal to JSIA, because if they don't do that, it's only at their loss. So I think, in my opinion, we will continue to have that dominant position in Japan. And if you consider our position when it comes to multi-brand, so we have another competitor of ours that have their own budget brand and very large in their budget brand, but we are actually brand obnoxious, so we can do any brand, and that opened up a lot of flexibility for us. With that, we could easily probably continue our growth trajectory. In Japan, there's this concept called warehousing. So what we have today, 82 hotels, we actually still have some that some warehousing for us, and that actually is $1 billion to $2 billion of inside, and we will be just a matter of time. We will take them over. So all this very soon will find their way into our REIT, and hopefully our REIT one day will be 100 hotel. I don't know. I mean, I'm not supposed to make a forward projection, but as a private client, you always kind of like be able to make a forward projection, but let the company always behave differently. So I feel like our growth trajectory in Japan is not an issue for us. We're really able to find opportunity, and more importantly, we had the ability to extract the inefficiency out of whatever we purchase. So we recently bought a 27 hotel portfolio last year, and we were able to get the yield to go up from 3 to about 12 to 15% just by restructuring the costs out and save $70 million on the portfolio of $900 million. That can really help us in a big time. So we have that ability that very few people have. And that's something that we would like to extend that base to CLI and continue to work with the service department platform of CLI, hospitality platform of CLI. I hope I answered your question.
We can take one more question before we wrap up. All right, it looks like they would like to raise more questions to you over lunch though, so be prepared for a very busy lunch later on. So thank you, Suchard and Chee Koon, for the very generous sharing over the last 30-40 minutes. Perhaps some last takeaway messages for the audience here. What I'm hearing from the last 30 minutes have been that there is a fair bit of cultural alignment. There is that fiduciary element that both parties and platforms are very adhere to. We hold that very close to our heart in respect of whether to our various set of stakeholders. At the same time, there's this nimbleness in an entrepreneurial outfit that Suchard has built over the last 20 years that obviously as CapitaLand investment, we have a lot of respect for. So perhaps just some last takeaway messages for the audience, Chee Koon and Suchard.
Yeah, let me, I might use up all the time, so be careful. I met Chee Koon, Miguel, and after that followed by the executive committee. I was very impressed with executive committee, and every time I met that, I go back to my partner and tell my partner that I'm really quite excited, and they're very together. The lunch that we have was a very good lunch. Followed by the presentation I made to the board in Tokyo about 2 weeks ago. I become even more convinced. And today, sitting here listening to the board on here, the board had a very high determination to see CLI's transformation. and put every effort that they have in terms of human resource, in terms of culture, in terms of providing a lot of support. I do sense that a lot of support from the board really want Chee Koon and his executive team to really do well. We are a very small part of that coming into it, very small part. So we must need to understand that we're going to be very humble. But our part is the part that CLI would like to kind of like move toward. So we will do everything we could to really work with the CLI team to make the transformation, the integration, the connectivity to be very smooth and very, very kind of like without any blip. Because in 3 to 5 year time, it will show whether we're successful or not successful. And I do think the early indication today suggests to me that the chance of being successful is extremely high here. I mean, Chee Koon, me, the board, executive team are very determined to make the whole thing work. Including in the future with a work in progress team. I'm sure there will be a lot more exciting things happening in CLI world today, and I'm glad to be part of it. I'm glad to bring my 200 over family to be part of it. It is very important for me that we need to go to the right family. We do have that option. Thank you.
Thank you. Suchat covered most of what I wanted to say. Maybe just one point. Miguel mentioned as a chairman, as a board, there's a tremendous focus from the board to make sure that the funds business, especially the private funds business, is successful. Which is why even as the group CEO, I've also taken on the role, as a CEO to drive the private funds business. So I'm fully personally accountable to make sure that it works, whether it's building the capability, investing in a platform. So I am 100% committed. I mean, if whether the private funds business can succeed or not, it's going to rest squarely on me and on the team. And we have a full determination to make sure we do the right things. There will be many deals that will come our way. It's not difficult to immediately become 200 billion, 300 billion actually within the year. It's not about just pursuing deal at all costs. It's about doing the right deals, building the enterprise value for all the shareholders. It's very sexy. I mean, I can say that, I can immediately achieve that. I say, I'm done. And then I can seek to retire. But I won't be doing the favor to all the investors who trust your capital by investing in CLI, the REITs, and the LPs, to trust us to look after your investments and to grow the enterprise value for the company. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.